questions on this? At the bottom, you don't have extra questions?
I don't have extra questions. My integrated webcam. It looks like it is doing something. No, but you can write whatever you want on the back. And so if you, that wasn't it. That wasn't. Yeah, guys, if you're just coming in, grab one of these evaluations, and that way you have plenty of time to fill them out. Okay.
Did you post your lecture from last Thursday?
The video?
Yeah.
No, I haven't put it up there yet.
All right, good.
So that is on my list of things to do. In fact, let me add that to my list of things to do. Otherwise,
Just to make sure I didn't miss it.
nope. I will find somebody who's capable hands. I can leave it in at the end. So. So let me go ahead and get started so we can make it through this lecture and leave enough time for everybody else to do the, leave everybody else plenty of time to do the evaluations at the end.
Is there a quiz this week? I know there was no lab, but there's no quiz.
There is no quiz. The quiz will be the final week, and there will also be a bonus quiz to get some extra points in lab. So it's nice because almost everybody ends up getting the full 250 points from lab, and then that, of course, makes me happy. I like people that get 100. So let's go ahead and get started with ecosystems and communities. So another thing that I will do is I'll post the homework from Chapter 15 so that you'll have plenty of time to be working on that, and you'll be able to get plenty of points from it. And let's see. If I post it tomorrow, then I'll make it due like in a week, so Wednesday to Wednesday. That'll work. Okay. So in thinking about what we have left as far as this class goes, so today we're going to do teacher evaluations, and I will post the homework for Chapter 15. Thursday, Turkey Day, no class, yay. Tuesday, December 2nd, and Thursday, December 4th, those are our final 2 classes. So we will finish Chapter 15 and make it as far as we can in Chapter 16. And then if you are happy with your grade, maybe I will go through and figure out how to post what your current grade is at the end of all of this. And then you can decide whether or not you want to take the final or not. So I say it's an option, but it's always better if you take the final, because if you take it and you get a better grade, your grade goes up. If you take it and get a worse grade, then your grade stays the same. So it's one of those, like, it can't hurt you to take the final. And I'll do it in the Computer-Based Testing Center, and so I'll have it from noon to 7 on December 11th, which I believe is a Thursday. And then if you had an exam that you missed, if you were sick or you missed it for athletics or band or whatever that is, any makeup exams that you want to take, I will be opening up in the Computer-Based Testing Center December 8th through 10th. But you have to make an appointment because I have to give you special access to that quiz or to that exam. So you need to talk to me about it. At least shoot me an email and we'll start figuring out how you can take those. So does anybody have any questions before we get into it? Okay. So wow, that's really dark. Chapter 15, this is the ecosystems and communities. This is the stuff that should pretty much make sense to you. We are going to begin looking at ecosystems and looking at, in this picture, most people will see the flamingos, but there's actually both living and non-living components to this ecosystem. In looking at what is an ecosystem, this is, we looked at it last time where we had an individual and then we had populations. They live in the environment, they have communities with different types of species, and they have the physical factors and or the non-living factors and the living factors. So an ecosystem is basically a community of biological organisms, so the living stuff, plus the non-living components in which the organisms interact. So if you look here in the pretty background that we have this bubbling brook, you can see that some non-living factors, the water, not living. Lots of stuff lives in the water, but the non-living water is one factor. The rocks, they are also not living. The air that's in the environment, also not living. And then plenty of nice living plants and animals. And so not just big environments, but we have entire ecosystems that are on in individual organisms. So not just like a pond or a forest, but we also, this is a type of weevil, and on its back it's got all kinds of different things living, different bacteria and fungi and parasites. And so he actually has an entire ecosystem that follows him around everywhere that he goes. Same thing with you. You have an entire ecosystem that's going on inside of your body. Some of your bacteria, some of you may have a fungus, and that may not be what you want. Some of you may have parasites. You may not even know it. You have bacteria that live on your skin. You've got non-living components to you, like the water that's in your blood, and your bones, and your cartilage. So there's lots of things that are ecosystems. They just have to have living and non-living factors to them. So some of the features that all ecosystems share is that they have, one, a biotic environment. So biotic, anytime you see that word bio, think alive. So biotic is the living stuff. These are the living organisms within a certain area, like when we talked about the lobsters that live in the bay in Maine. They live in one particular area, they're alive, and they're often referred to as a community because if you look at this picture, we have all kinds of different types of fish. We've got these living corals down here. We've got sharks and turtles and all kinds of great stuff. And then we've got our plants on the beach. So biotic is everything that's living. And then physical or abiotic meaning not living. I should designate here, it does not mean dead. If something is a dead organism, it's still biotic because it was once living. But if something was never living, like the carbon or the hydrogen or the water, then it would be considered abiotic. So these are chemical resources, physical conditions within an area, and that is often referred to as an organism's habitat. So all around the world, we have these variety of biomes. You could think of one of the biomes here in northeastern Ohio is different than it would be in Alaska, and it's different than it would be in Texas, and it's different than it would be in the plains in Africa. I'll pass them out at the end so that you get a chance to get them. And it's determined primarily by temperature and rainfall. So in order to distinguish what a biome is, we look at the average temperature. As you know, in Ohio, we have a wide fluctuation of temperatures, but we look at what is the average. Then we look at the average rainfall or other precipitation like snow or sleet. We look at whether the temperature is constant or does it vary seasonally. In deserts, it's always hot. Or if you think of Antarctica, it's a desert that's always cold because it gets very little precipitation. And then we look at, is the rainfall relatively constant or does it vary seasonally? Like you've probably heard of the rainy season in the tropical rainforest or periods of drought. So what I basically just said there, primary productivity levels, that means what kind of organic matter is produced, what kind of plants grow, how much biotic different types of factors are added into the ecosystem. So the more rain you have, the more chance you have to grow lots of plants, and then the things that eat plants. And so there are different types of primary producers, the chief determinants of the amount and breadth of other life in the region. So if you produce lots of grasses, you're going to have lots of things that eat those grasses. If you produce lots of algae, you're going to have lots of things that eat that algae. And so here are our terrestrial biomes. Whenever we say the word terrestrial, that word terra means land. So a terrestrial biome is the living things on the land. So here are 9 different types of biomes that you can find around the world. So if you look at this world map, you can see where the different biomes are found throughout the world. The tropical rainforest, that's going to be very hot and lots of precipitation. So it rains almost every day, and it's always very warm. And so you're going to find a tropical rainforest right there around the equator. And then deserts, the yellow, you can see all those yellow spots up there. The deserts are going to be very hot, but not very much rain. In the savannas, you can see lots of those throughout Africa. Think of like your area where you have the grazing zebras and giraffes and elephants. Very few trees and lots of grassland. And then we have our temperate grassland, which is a place where it's not quite as hot as the tropical rainforest, but it's pretty rainy. The temperate deciduous forest, this is what Ohio is going to be. So if you look up there, Ohio's right there in the green, where we've got lots of trees, not as much rainfall as the tropical rainforest, not as hot as the rainforest. It may feel like we're in the polar ice, but we're not. It does get cold in the wintertime. But you can see these different biomes found in these different layers. It's interesting to see. If you look across the equator right there, you see some definite tropical rainforests. If you move up and down from the equator, you can see your deserts, lots of grassland over here in Africa. And then your polar ice obviously is not going to be there near the equator. It's going to be up there near the top. And the tundra doesn't get a lot of rain, but it's really cold. Coniferous forests, I always think of coniferous forests as being full of trees that make pine cones. So evergreen trees. And then the chaparral has got smaller, not big trees, but it's also not grassland. So you can see how it kind of moves from temperature, from hot to cold, and then rainfall from lots of rainfall to not a whole lot of rainfall. And then we have our aquatic biomes. These are the ones that are going to be found in the water, aquatic biomes. So lakes and ponds are one, rivers and streams. Here you can see an interesting map of the United States and North America, where you can see, this is cool for me since I like to go scuba diving. I can see all the places where we've got the coral reefs. We've got our estuaries and wetlands, which are up here along the coast, where you find lots of mangrove trees, and the Great Lakes that are right up in here. And we've got all these passageways of water that are carrying the water around from the different parts in North America. So aquatic biome is anything that is water, and terrestrial biome is anything that's found on the land. So then we get to, well, we've got these areas that have precipitation and temperature, but how do the physical forces work together in order to create weather? As we all know, in Ohio, we are accustomed to varied weather. You almost never know what's going to happen from day to day. Could be raining, could be snowing, could be hot. So how do the things that are found in these different ecosystems work together in order to create our weather? So one of the things that affects our weather is the global air circulation pattern. So if you've ever gone out in a big airplane, and they talk about riding the Gulf Stream. That's one air pattern. People that fly planes think about that all the time. It can also bring in what we have, the fronts, where we picture the snow getting dumped on us. We've got warm air that moves from California and comes across North America. We have cold air coming down, warm air coming up. So the way that this air circulates here on Earth is going to create patterns that make our deserts and our rainforests. And so when we are looking at the Earth and looking at the way that the sun is going to shine on Earth, one of the things that you have to look at is the poles versus the equator. So the equator is what cuts the Earth in half, and found down here through South America. And the solar energy that hits at the equator, the reason that is the equator is because it is the closest to the sun. So we don't usually think about how big the Earth actually is and how many hundreds of thousands of miles closer the equator is than the North Pole or the South Pole. So these are going to get the most indirect light coming from the sun, so the least amount of energy. So North Pole, it's taking the longest to go from the round of the sun all the way over here to the round of the Earth. That's a really, really long way. And then to reach from the closest part of the sun to the closest part of the Earth, that's about half. And so we've got temperatures that are very high on the equator and very low at the poles. And it's spread out as it's reaching the different parts of the Earth. And so what happens when all of this temperature, whether it be warm or cold, reaches the Earth? It's going to depend on how much precipitation you're getting in the different areas. So on the equator, we tend to see lots of precipitation as the moisture evaporates up into the air and then comes back down in the form of precipitation. So what basically happens, we've got our sun. Its energy is coming down and bouncing off of the Earth, and then air, as it becomes heated down near the Earth, is going to rise up into the atmosphere, and as it rises, it's going to cool. And when it gets to a certain point where it's cold enough, this cooling air loses moisture, and it's going to hold less moisture, so it's going to condense, form a cloud, and then eventually the rain is going to fall. So that's one of the reasons we have different places that are wetlands and different places that are deserts. So if you look here at the circulation patterns of the air on Earth, we've got warm air that is rising up and away from the Earth's surface, and this depends on how the Earth is spinning. So as it rises up, it's going to cool up here and come back down, and rise up and come back down. And so we see this spinning as it gets heated by the sun, rises up into the atmosphere, and then comes back down as it cools. So as air moves towards the Earth's surface and becomes warmer, it can hold more moisture. In these areas, there's little rainfall. So that's why we see these deserts up here at these higher latitudes. So the next thing that we look at is what is the shape of the land. Local topography, or hills and valleys, influences our weather. So here we've got a big mountain range. We have those throughout North America. I feel like a meteorologist. If only I could see what was actually happening. So here we've got our, sorry, I don't know why that struck me as funny. Here we've got a mountain range, and as the air is blowing in off the coast, it starts to cool as it's moving up, and that's why we start to see lots of moisture coming down on the sides of the mountains. And sometimes if it reaches the top of the mountain, dumps out all of its precipitation and comes down, you may find we've got our wet areas over here, and as it crosses over the mountain, it loses all of its precipitation and maybe a desert on the other side. So here we've got the rising air that's cooling and losing moisture, and as it passes over, it becomes warmer. and then comes back down and causes dry areas to happen. So this may look familiar to you. This is kind of like what the Akron community looks like. So what we're looking at here is it warmer or cooler in urban areas relative to nearby rural areas? So these modern landscapes, putting cities in different places, actually influences the weather. So what you're looking at is a heat chart here. Here we have the lower temperatures. Here we have the higher temperatures. And so as these go up in height, they're going to be colder up here at the top, but down here closer to the ground, they're going to be warmer. Because lots of things happen in the cities that make them warmer through asphalt, through cement, building tops, if you've ever seen blacktops. Raises the temperature, and then as you go up, it's going to decrease the temperature. And so for any of you guys that were out walking around, was it yesterday when it was super windy? And it was crazy. It was like 1 minute it was really warm, and the next thing the wind comes through and changes as it whips around these buildings, changes the temperature a lot. So why is it so windy on those streets that have buildings? It's because when you have these tall buildings, they're going to force the wind downward. So anybody who's ever come out of the of Schrank Hall all the way down at the bottom, there's that terrace or tunnel level. The wind going through there, it could almost rip those doors off. If you ever wondered why those doors are so heavy, it's because as the wind whips down here on Akron's campus, it can actually rip those doors off. And anybody who's ever walked over by the Polymer building, there's one part where it's almost always windy, whether it's windy outside or not. And it's because these tall buildings force the wind downwards, and anybody who's ever been to New York City has experienced that. So next, looking at ocean currents and how they affect the weather. So usually near the ocean, we find much more temperate climates because the water is going to hold the heat a bit more effectively. And this affects the global patterns of circulation in the oceans. So not only do we have these swirling winds and swirling airflows, we also have patterns of circulation that happen in the ocean. So out there in the Atlantic, we have the beaches on the East Coast are warmer than on East Coast are warmer than on the West Coast because of the circulation patterns that we see here in the oceans. And notice they are exactly the opposite on the other side of the equator. So red is warm water, blue is cold water, and so this affects how nutrients are moved around through the ocean, which affects the different types of life that can be sustained in the ocean. And it's really interesting to see how this goes this way, this goes this way. Like if you've ever heard that if you go to Australia and you flush the toilet, it goes counterclockwise, and up here in North America, it goes this way. So it's because of the positioning on the equator. So this is going to move this way, and that goes that way. And this one moves this way, and this one goes that way. So the movement is going to be affected by wind, the Earth's rotation, the gravitational pull of the moon. That's why we have tides. The temperature, and then the salt concentration is also known as the salinity. And so all those lucky people that live on the ocean, why do beach communities have milder weather than more inland communities? It's because water holds that heat in it very, very well. It absorbs the heat energy from the sun, and it holds the heat inside of it. That's why it may be a nice, steady 70 degrees in California, or you go down to Mexico and it's in the 80s. And then we have this wild and crazy weather that we see happening in Ohio. It's because we are obviously not a beach community. So beaches on the east coast of the United States have warmer water than on the west coast, even though they're at the same latitude or the direction from the equator. And why would that happen? it has to do with something that's called El Nino. And I got to experience this firsthand when I went to the Galapagos Islands back in 1997. So El Nino is a weather pattern that just screws up all of these ocean communities. So when I went to the Galapagos, they were right in the middle of a drought. And so because it was a drought, a lot of the animals were going hungry. So everywhere you went, there were dead animals. There were dead sea lions and dead marine iguanas. And so El Nino, which is this wild weather event, happens every 2 to 7 years. It can cause flooding, and then the opposite is drought. It can cause lots of rain, and then famine is when you can't is when you have such a dry period that things don't have enough to eat and everything starves. And it can cause a variety of other climate disruptions. So here's what it's like when we have our usual conditions. So we have steady winds that are blowing across this ocean and are going from South America across to Australia and Southeast Asia. And they push the warm surface water away from the coast of South America, and then it heats up the air above it, which causes it to rise and make these tropical rainstorms. But during El Nino, the usual South American to Southeast Asia winds ease up a little bit. So here we've got 3 bars of wind. Here we have 1 bar of wind. And so what essentially happens is that without the push of this wind, the warm water is going to flow back towards South America. So look, we've got warm water here, and here we have the warm water over there. And the cooled water is going to be around Australia, and then the Philippines are up here. And it causes these dry weather events that lead to droughts and lead to not producing as much plants and animals dying off. And it's a wild fluctuation that happens. All right, next thing we talk about is the chemicals that flow throughout this ecosystem. We have energy that is flowing from producers to consumers. So here is our sun up here. And as you all know from your basic food chain, you get the energy from the sun. It flows down to the primary producers. These are your grasses, or in the aquatic environment, it would be algae. And so these plants are going to convert light energy from the sun into food through photosynthesis. And so we have the most number of primary producers out there because that's where most of the energy harvesting is coming from. So then primary consumers are the herbivores. These are the guys that are eating the plants. And so there's not going to be as many primary consumers as there are primary producers, but eating plants is a pretty efficient way to get your energy. Then you're going to have even less secondary consumers because carnivores have to depend on herbivores that are eating the primary producers. And then finally, we have the least number of tertiary consumers, or the top carnivores, like your great white shark or your eagle or us. You're going to have the least number of those because this is going to eat this, which has to eat this, which has to eat this. And so here in looking at this food chain, we're looking at very simple one-to-one interaction. Sun to plant, plant to animal, animal to animal, animal to top animal. But as we know, it never really works that way. Out there in nature, we have food webs, which are a better generalization, because most things that are out there don't just eat one thing. So this thing that eats plants eats lots of different types of plants. We've got lots of different types of insects. Insects are eaten by lots of different types of things. The snake doesn't just eat him, it eats all kinds of stuff. And this may eat this and this and this. So food webs are a better way of representing what happens in the environment. Food chain is just a very simple way of saying this to this, this to this, this to this. So in looking at that, I guess I already said all of that. So it's just working its way through. Okay, So do we have a food chain or a food web? If you're going simply through the various levels of animals from producer to herbivore to carnivore to top carnivore, that would be a food chain. But a food web is all of those various energy levels that has multiple stops as you move around and the crossing of all of those food chains. So here's another stop on the food chain or food web. What is the thing that decomposes all of the dead stuff that's left at the end? These guys can actually decompose anything. So mold is something that decomposes. If you've ever left fruit in your refrigerator for months, you may find it in the back of your drawers and it's covered in mold, and if you left it long enough, it would eventually go away. Here we have compost beetles, so they're basically eating shit. And so we call these things decomposers or detritivores. Something that is a decomposer is going to break down organic waste, and something that is a detritivore is going to eat the waste products. And so what they basically do is they get their energy from the chemical components as they break them down, which can then be reused by plants and other primary producers. So basically, if we didn't have these guys, then as things died, they would never go away. And if they never go away, we don't have soil, and we've got pileups of dead stuff all around. So things need to be recycled. I don't know if you guys ever saw, I used to use an email address called Humus Lover. And Humus Lover basically was, humus is the point at which the things that are dying are coming down to the ground and then turning into soil and using new things to grow. And so that was one of my areas of study in my undergrad. I studied dirt. And so one of my degrees is in dirt. So looking at how energy flows through these systems, there's going to be energy that is lost at every step. It's never a perfect system where we have one-to-one-to-one. And that's because there's an inefficiency of energy transfers. So what we have is called an energy pyramid, and it looks at the inefficiency of food chains. So we always talk about this 10% rule. Basically, 10% of the energy is passed up to the next organism, from the producers to the consumers, from the consumers up. And we get to one point where there's just not enough energy to support another consumer. So we also see this in biomass. So not only do we have energy that's being lost, we have the living matter that's being lost as well. And where does it go? If you eat a hamburger, and you take that into your digestive system and you start pulling the energy from the chemicals in your hamburger, and you're taking and you're using them, where does all of that energy go? Because as you know, nothing ever goes in your mouth and comes out your other end exactly as it went in. So a lot of the energy and the biomass is going to be lost as you use the energy to do work or to breathe. That's what cellular respiration is. Or in the end, the final waste product has to be feces to get all of the stuff that you didn't use out of your system. So we often look at what do humans eat? Why would being a vegetarian be more energetically efficient than meat eating? And there it's because we have our 10% rule again. So basically, humans that eat vegetables are getting lots of energy from those vegetables. But when we eat a hamburger, the meat in the cow has to consume something to make the energy. So the cow is going to eat lots and lots and lots of grasses in order to put on weight to make the hamburger that you eventually eat. And so it takes, if you go 100% of the grasses that cows are eating, only 10% is moving up the system to make weight on the cow or make meat on the cow. So it's a very inefficient system. If we ate a lot more vegetables, we would have a lot more energy. People that eat a lot of meat often are the most sluggish. So this is one of the reasons we don't have so many big and fierce animal species. If you think about like a cheetah out there chasing after a gazelle eats tons and tons and tons of plants, and then there have to be so many gazelles to feed this one cheetah. And then nothing just eats cheetahs because it's the top of the food chain. Same reason nothing eats great white sharks and nothing eats us. Because once we get up to the very top of the food chain, there isn't any way to support those animal species. So looking at that as this pyramid, looking at the energy pyramid, if here we have 100% of our primary producers, so we've got tons and tons and tons of grasses down here, then 10% of the weight of those grasses is going to be transferred up to the primary consumer. And so, sorry. So then we have our primary consumer. Again, 10% moves up and is converted to biomass. And then we have our secondary consumer, 10% moves up. So if we have 1,000 pounds worth of primary producers, then we're going to have 100 pounds of primary consumers. Then we're going to have 10 pounds of secondary consumers. Then we have 1 pound of tertiary consumers. And that's because so much is lost as you move up each one of the trophic levels. So we see some variation in that. It's never an exact science. It's never exactly perfect, like 1,000 to 100 to 10 to 1. It's never exact like that. But we also see sometimes it is flipped, or it has some variety to it. So if we have a large-based pyramid where we support a large amount of consumers, this might be a place like the rainforest where we're producing so much plants because we have this high temperature and high rainfall. It also is common in algal beds, which is a big area that has lots of algae. It's got plenty of algae for the things to eat and then the things that eat that. So large-based pyramids are where we have usually lots of rainfall, lots of temperature. We also may have small-based pyramids, as you can imagine. Not a lot of plants in the desert. The desert, if you think about like the deserts in Africa or South America or even on the South Pole. Not lots of, in the South Pole, low temperature, low rainfall. In the deserts, we have high temperature, low rainfall. In the tundra, like up in Alaska, where you've got just a little bit of ground cover but no big trees, they have a low temperature, low rainfall. Or out in the open ocean. Not a whole lot of things live out in the open ocean because there's not a lot for them to eat. And we may also see an inverted pyramid. This occurs in some aquatic ecosystems where we have plankton, a small amount of producers, and it supports a large biomass of consumers. So it can move around and it can have some variety to it. So the essential chemicals in this cycle, we get the recycling of molecules. If you've ever seen that Facebook post where it talks about dinosaurs and it says, if these plastic dinosaurs, or if these dinosaurs are made out of plastic, aren't they made out of real dinosaurs because plastic is made out of the oil that is a fossil fuel that came from the carbon in the system. And so this cycling throughout the ecosystem, everything has to be reused. We never just make new stuff. We use what's already there. So we call that a chemical reservoir, so a backup of the chemicals we need. We need lots of carbon because we're carbon-based life forms. We need lots of oxygen, hydrogen, oxygen and hydrogen to make our water. Each chemical is stored in a non-living part of the environment, and the organisms in that environment are going to acquire that chemical from one of the reservoirs. And then these chemicals are going to cycle through the food chain. We see an oxygen cycle, hydrogen, we see carbon cycle. And so eventually everything gets returned in its chemical reservoir. So the three that we're going to look at today, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Here's our carbon cycle. We've got lots of atmospheric carbon dioxide, so all of the CO2 that's floating around in our atmosphere. And then the first step is that we take our sun for the energy and our atmospheric carbon dioxide. We go through photosynthesis, and these plants make biomass. So they basically build sugars during photosynthesis. Then our consumers eat those producers, and the carbon moves through into the consumers. And they extract that energy by breaking apart carbon bonds, and they exhale the carbon dioxide back up into the environment. Same thing happens here, where it's getting its food from an organism, and it's going to release it through chemical respiration, and it's going to send the atmospheric carbon dioxide back up into the atmosphere. So notice at every point in time we've got things breathing and releasing it back up into the atmosphere, and we have things dying. And so it becomes part of the carbon reservoir here in the soil. And eventually, after enough time, after enough pressure, we get our coal, our oil, and our natural gas, which are our fossil fuels. And if we burn those fossil fuels, the carbon dioxide gets back up into the atmosphere as well. So you can see that it's this cycle as it moves down and up and back down into the environment. And it can either do this in an environmentally friendly fashion, or us good old humans have tapped into the coal and oil and natural gas, and we release it back up into the atmosphere as pollution. So why are global CO2 levels rising? Why are we getting so much more carbon dioxide? It's because as we have industrialized and as more and more people want more and more cars and to take big trips in airplanes, airplanes are some of the worst polluters that there are out there. And then next comes cars. And so the reason global carbon dioxide levels are rising, because we have such a dependence on fossil fuels. And so even though they are rising in general, they can really fluctuate and sharply rise and fall within each one of the year depending upon the seasons. So, oh, I guess I didn't have another slide that showed that. Here we look at the nitrogen cycle. So out there in our atmosphere, as you guys know, you're not breathing pure oxygen. You're breathing in carbon. You're breathing in lots of nitrogen. And so nitrogen is a big part of our living bodies. And nitrogen has a chemical structure which is unusable by most organisms, but is fixed in these nitrogen-fixing bacteria. They are then modified into a form that plants suck up through their roots. So if you ever think about fertilizers, fertilizers are often nitrogen-based because plants need that nitrogen to form their bodies, and they get that. And then as they are eaten, it's going to get passed through the food chain, and it's going to eventually go back down into the soil and back up into the atmosphere after these bacteria break it all apart and release it again. So nitrogen is necessary to build all of your amino acids in your body, your amino acids, which are the basis of all of your proteins, the building blocks of you. And a couple places where we get lots of nitrogen from: animal waste and dead animals. as they're broken apart by the soil bacteria, they convert the nitrogen in the tissues back into the nitrogen that's in the atmosphere. And so that's why it's pretty important that our atmosphere be a certain ratio of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, because that's what's essential for us to be able to be alive. So nitrogen is like a bottleneck limiting plant growth. So if a plant doesn't get enough fertilizer or doesn't get its nitrogen in some way, then the plant isn't able to grow. And so the plant is sitting there, it's kind of at the mercy of the environment. Because if it's not there, there's nothing the plant can do about it. It can't pick up and walk somewhere else. And so nitrogen is the thing that is limiting a lot of plant growth. And so think about going out as a farmer and covering your soils with nitrogen fertilizers, and that causes your plants to grow bigger. So if you don't fertilize your plants, they don't grow as well. But if you do fertilize them, they grow up rather nicely. So you need this nitrogen, and it has to come from somewhere where the plants are planted. The final cycle we look at is the phosphorus cycle. So this is another part of fertilizers. We have plants that are absorbing the phosphorus in their roots from the soil, and as it moves through the food chain, it moves as things are eating one another. And the reason we need phosphorus is that it produces ATP, which is the energy that you use in order to do all your bodily functions, and it helps to build up DNA, so part of that phosphorus backbone of DNA. And phosphorus only returns to the soil when dead stuff breaks apart through those bacteria and the soil decomposers. And so it's eventually reached as rock is slowly weathered away, as we see erosion events start to happen. But phosphorus is found in the soil, not up in the atmosphere. So something called eutrophication is the increase in nutrients in an ecosystem. So if suddenly you have lots of nitrogen and lots of phosphorus where you didn't have it before, suddenly you have this large growth of plants because they're like, woo, look, we got lots of nitrogen, we got lots of phosphorus, let's grow really big. And so if that happens in an aquatic ecosystem, you've probably all seen algal blooms where you have runoff of fertilizer from farms or from people using it to fertilize their lawns, and then you have this huge growth of the green algae in a lake or in a pond, and that's not good for that ecosystem because as the algae grows out of control, they consume a lot of the oxygen, which can cause things like fish and insects and macroinvertebrates to die off because they basically suffocate. They have no oxygen available. And so this is one of the reasons we regulate the fertilizer use among farms and people, because if we use lots of fertilizer to grow our agriculture and then we poison our lakes with it, we may end up losing a food source that we really need. And so it's affecting the lakes in Asia, Europe, North America. You see this great dying off of a lot of the aquatic life. And so this is where I think that we left off. Here is a fish living inside of a piece of coral. And as you know, your Nemo, he's got his relationship with the sea anemone. And these are the tentacles of the sea anemone. So we have species that are always interacting with one another and interacting with the community. So we'll pick up with this next time. But before you stop reading, give me 1 second. If you haven't done the evaluation yet, I need somebody to volunteer to collect them at the end. If you think you're still going to be around here, just to put them in the envelope. And then downstairs at the bottom of Schrank, there's a bunch of mailboxes. You can stick it in the campus mail. So do I have someone who will volunteer? Otherwise, I can do it, but I don't like for you guys to think like I don't want you guys to think like, oh, I'm going to go in there and like pour over them in my office when I'm done. So if somebody wants to put them in the mail, I'd appreciate it. Please be honest, give suggestions, but remember that I actually have a job to do here. And I would also like you to go to Rate My Professor and rate me, because I feel that these ratings that professors get, students may have chosen this course based on the aspects that I have versus the other professors. And so I don't go check those out either. In fact, I find them almost horrifying to hear what people say about me. So you can go to Rate My Professor. I'm the only Amy Hollingsworth on there. You'll be able to find it. But your things that you say help other people in making their decisions about the course. So be honest, and more information is better. So if you're ever wondering, what should I write about on Rate My Professor or on an evaluation, here are some things to note about classes. Did you like the technology? Did you think the professor was helpful or caring or nasty and a jerk? What did you think of videos? Do you like that I post things? Do you think the material is too easy or too hard? Did you like lecture? Did you like lab better? Would you take me again? And I suggest that you sit down before you do your exams, like when you'll be pissed off. Before that, give everybody an honest rating, like what you actually think of them. And you should rate all of your professors. I think that this is the best way to socially understand who professors are and whether you can stand them or not. And so if you fill out these evaluations, there is my info, and you said you'll take them down and stick them in the end? Okay. All right, then I will see you guys next Tuesday. Have a wonderful Turkey Day.
You too. Thank you.
Gobble, gobble. Sure. Are you okay?
Did we have homework last week?
We did, and I'll give you some extra time to do it.
What was it?
With chapter 14.
Okay. I know you said last week you will be checking notes. Did you check notes?
I did.
Okay.
I didn't put up the grades for them yet, but I did check them. And so,
Did we show them to you, or?
Yes.
Like, okay.
yeah.
From last week.
Okay. There's a spot on Springboard under the Dropbox where you can upload them, because I need them there so that I can grade them. So you can just take a picture with your phone or scan it or whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And homework. The other assignment, other than showing you notes, is on
Springboard under quizzes.
quizzes. Okay.
And if you need more time, let me know. I will help you out.
No, I'm gonna go do that when I leave.
Okay.
I have nothing else to do. Final is optional. And did you get my email about my grade?
Yes. If you want to hang out for a second, we can figure out your grade. Hello.
Yeah, I'm just talking. Remember that?
You're going to be gone for like the next
Yeah,
6
so
weeks,
the thing
aren't
is-
you?
So the thing is, I was looking for my grade, and I have like a A minus now.
Good.
But I put like 235 for my lab grades.
Okay.
So I didn't put like all of them.
Okay.
So
Your
but,
grade can go up then, definitely. I mean,
yeah,
you'll get some bonus
the
points.
The question is, because we have a lot of bonus, right?
Right.
So like I'm of course I'm gonna do them, and
Good.
all my homeworks, like I've done all of them. So if I do all of those bonus they're left, I think my grade's gonna go up for an A, or
Yeah, I think it could.
because
because-
I don't wanna like stuck in an A minus if I can have an A, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand.
But because I have a lot of like I have some other finals to take, so
Right. So you don't want to stress yourself out with too many things
Yeah.
to do. I think that you'll end up, if you have an A minus now and you finish everything for lab and you finish everything for me, then I think you'll probably end up with an A. Because if I remember back to where you were on the grades of all of the students, I remember that you were like one of the third or fourth top people. So I think you're doing pretty well.
Because I got a 75 on my first test, but then I got a 97 and 87.
Yeah.
So then the average like a 85, 86 actually.
Okay.
So then, but then all my homeworks I did pretty
Good.
well. And then the lab I put 235 because I wasn't sure if I was gonna get like the 250.
You'll probably get 250.
So you get a 250?
I think you will probably get the 250 because there's enough bonus points in there that you'll get it.
Oh, I see. I see.
So I think you're going to be in pretty good shape because if you even out those exams and then you look at your lab grade, since your lab grade is essentially a 100, it's going to bring your grade up. I think you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah. I'm just worried if I don't take it and then I end up like.
If you want to,
when
hear about right before finals
Yeah,
week,
that would be great.
we'll figure out your grade and see
That'd be
whether you
great.
need to take it or not. But you've got to remind me because
I will.
I
will.
never
So
remember.
When can I email and you have the answer, basically?
I need to have all the TAs have uploaded all of their grades, and so I usually get that from them by about, well, they have to grade the presentations, the group presentations, so usually by that weekend, maybe Friday.
So Friday of next
So
week.
not, yes, Friday of next week.
So Friday of next week I can
Yes.
shoot an email and
Yep.
figure that out.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Bye, y'all. Happy gobble gobble day, folks.
Are you making a run for it?
Yes, gotta go pay these bills.